One follow-up, Sudheesh, to what you said on the sales, on the sales leader or the sales team that you hire, and really trusting them and letting them run. And very interesting point that you mentioned, where there may be some sales which you as a founder may be able to close, but you have to trust them that they may not be able to close all of those because they're not the founder. So how do you then, you're coming at it from the other side of it, where how do you know when a salesperson, let's say you hired someone and they're actually not performing, right? But where do you draw that line? How do you know actually that they're not performing and you need to actually change something versus sort of giving them more room? And how do you sort of act on that?
Yeah, so in basketball, you cannot teach height, right? You can teach a lot of things, but you cannot teach height. So I kind of think of it like the skill-will quadrant. So imagine X is skill and Y is will, or Y, whichever way. Think of it like the skill and will. And top right is where you have high skill and high will. And bottom right is low skill and low will. One of these axes, wherever you wrote will, is not teachable. Skill is teachable. And the beauty of what he talked about, the metrics that we talked about, right? Sales at the end of is an eminently quantifiable scientific process. In the sense that at the end of every 90 days, you will know where you stand. It is difficult to measure engineers. You cannot use the line of code that you write or the number of bugs you identified or fixed. That's not a good measure. But in sales, all bullshit will end and you are stacked ranked. And that is fair because it is a job where your job is to bring revenue, booking to your business. So that's fair. However, in the early stages of a company, you could lose a deal for a number of different reasons. You could lose because in the end, Microsoft came in and bought the business. There's nothing you can do. No amount of sales sometimes can actually. In the end, they just didn't have the risk quotient to really deal with a company with 5 people. You could have qualified it out, but chances are you got excited, right? All things happen. So it is important to understand where is the seller or the leader failing in the skill-will table. If it is will, there is not much you can do. And once you identify it is a will issue, you have to part ways. But you have to part ways. One thing that I've learned in the world of early stage companies, there are very few people who can actually come in and help build that. And they usually is a small world, which means how you part is extremely critical. You have to part ways in the most respectful way, without surprises. So if somebody is struggling, and this is another thing that I found technical founders have difficulties with, is having the difficult conversation up front before it becomes a problem. There is no gradual slope when it comes to your people. So usually what happens is you will start talking, okay, this person is not doing well. And then no matter what you do, it's a slippery slope. You are never letting that person off that penalty box, but you're not going to fire them because you don't want to have that difficult discussion. And at some point in time, they're not making enough money and they're leaving. Or you hire somebody who can actually fire them or something like that happens. For the last 9 months, they've been in that slop. That is a really dangerous thing to do, particularly when you don't have resources. Everyone that works for you are your people until the day they're not. And when they are your people, you are doing everything you can to make them successful, which includes leading from the front. In the early days of a company, there is no forecast call where you sit there and yell them and tell them what to do. It's all happening. So for example, if at the end of quarter you forecast a deal, it has not come in. Your job is not to tell them what they should tell. Your job is to say, okay, let me figure out how to help. So Emily, tell me what the number is. Let's get on a call together. I'm going on the call with you. Let us understand what's happening. And then let's see how we can actually turn this deal around. There are 2 things that seller is learning. Number 1, there is no penalty for telling bad news upstairs, which is important because you want to know the bad news. If they think that you're going to be judged and be fired because you escalated bad news, they will never tell you. So number 1, you are creating a culture of transparency when it comes to sellers who are telling you when things are not going well because they know they're going to get help, not get fired or criticized. Number 2, you will learn what actually happens in the front end of a closing a deal. Not as a founding CEO genius telling the vision, mission, which is very easy to razzle people by talking the vision. When you tell them, now I need you to pay me. A company that is so small that if we are really successful, we might get acquired and killed. And if we are not successful, we might run out of money and cease existing. This is the honest truth, isn't it? You're going to a customer and saying, pay me money, and there is no guarantee I'll be around a year from now. That is very risky for a customer. How do you communicate that? How do you empathize with that position of a customer? How do you handle that objection? That's not something you can understand through hearsay. You got to be there. And when you do that, you will understand what the company needs to do from a product and messaging and partnering point of view to help that seller close that deal. And the sales team is now comfortable escalating bad news. And when those two things happen, you will start seeing that vibrancy that is building in the company, where sellers feel like I'm as much part of building this company, and that skill will table become very clear. And then you will find sellers who fall short. And usually it is about laziness. Because in the process of early stage company building, it is an all-consuming job. And there are some people who are not cut out for it. Reality is that, you need to be responding back, because one of the highest impact thing you can do is low latency communication. If a customer sends an inbound request, within 2 minutes you're responding back. Saturday night you're responding. Sunday morning you're responding. You can't pay people to do that. You can't ask people to do that. They have to do it. How do you sort of innately create that culture where people feel so much of an ownership that they're responding back in the middle of a birthday party, right? Middle of a soccer practice, because they love it. And when they do that, you're differentiating. And that differentiation needs to be created. And then you realize the ones who are not cut out for it. And when you find that, communicate early. Look, this is not working out. So what's happening? How can I help? So number one, communicate clearly. Number two, how can I help? Number three, I'm going to say, here is how I'm going to measure you. And here is when I'm going to measure you again. So 3 months from now, we're going to do all these things. A month from now, we'll come back and measure. A month from now, we'll measure. A month from now, measure. So what happens is 3 months from now, it's very clear. Things are not looking good. Chances are that person left. Or you can make that discussion by saying, look, this is not the right fit. You know where we are, how we are. And have the respectful discussion. A couple of things will happen. Number one, that person won't screw up your glass door, because it is important. You won't be able to recruit. Number two, anytime you're trying to recruit somebody else, guess what? They're going to find who was there, and they're going to call that person, and they're going to say, no, don't go there. That CEO thinks he knows everything. And that's the thing that salespeople don't like to do nowadays. Because if they believe that I'm working for this all-knowing person where they know everything about sales, who wants to work for a person like that? Will you work for somebody who knows everything, micromanages everything, criticizes everything? You won't. Why do you expect a builder like you to come work for it? Then you will end up with coin-operated people who will say yes, and they end up working for you because they believe there is quota is going to be low, commission is going to be high, stock option will be there. If I complete 1 year, I'll get some stock. And that's the kind of people who take the company down the drain.
I think only one thing I'll add is kind of talking on the same lines on the culture. And we were in a different situation where we got our head of sales middle of 2017, but I was still heavily engaged. One thing I did, which I felt really good, because even to date, we have a much larger sales team, is I established that one-on-one connection with every salesperson. It doesn't take a lot of time. People think that network takes a lot of time. No, it's that on your drive back, if you know it's Christmas Eve, or you randomly call without an agenda, says, hey, what's up? What's going on? The initial salespeople, and we had this from some of our sales, was like, when a founder or a CEO calls, they are saying, oh, something is going to happen. And you do nothing. It's like, just what's up? Just want to see, do you need my help? Haven't caught up in a while. And that's it. You call without an agenda, not for any reason. What that does is, when they feel comfortable with you, they say, hey, I need your help with this thing. Do you have any ideas? Like, it's a beginning of a deal. This customer is about to pull a trigger on a budget, but it's for next year. Do you have any ideas, Rishi? And then you just start there and says, oh yeah, and how about we try this? And we made progress on so many early deals, because inherently one thing that happens for the founder and exec team is you see more, right? To his point, right, you don't need to be a micromanager, but you have a view of the roadmap more. You have a view of the problems happening in the zone which he doesn't know. You know where the product is doing well, what is not working in the product. But you cannot help that salesperson if he or she does not feel comfortable with you. Build that bond. It's like even till date, it's like simple things. It's amazing. It's like, it was literally a simple thing. I was going on vacation to India. And I just called our new head of sales for the East. And I was like, hey, just wanted to say happy holidays. I'm leaving. It's like, oh my God, I came from this extremely toxic environment where it's like, nobody cared. All they called me when I was not meeting my number. You just called me happy. It's like, happy holidays. Really, Rishi? Nothing else? Like, nope. Happy holidays. And I've done that with people without realizing what it means. And now I started to realize it means a lot because they are by themselves in the field. Imagine, right? You being themselves, like out there in the field. They have a number on the head, limited resources. There's an SC, and they're far away. They don't know what's happening in the headquarters on a daily basis. So there is this geographical distance which gets created. Try to bridge that distance with personal touch.
Absolutely.